Hi guys and welcome back to Planet 40k. We're talking Necrons again. If you've not yet subscribed, do so because we're going to be talking a lot of Necrons from 11th edition onwards. Tactical stuff, combinations, detachment stuff, and of course Planet 40k ratings will be back for 11th edition. But in the previous video we were talking about the new faction focus that was on the Warhammer community webpage. They released 3 new detachments and they gave us they gave us 3 new detachments, and there were snippets of enhancements and stratagems and how they're going to operate for Necrons in 11th edition. Now I said in that video I was going to go away, look for some new combinations, go into our Discord. If you've not joined the Discord, the link will be down below. We went into the Discord, I went into the Discord, looked for some combinations. I went onto the Facebook community pages, so I had a look at that. And of course the video comments on the previous video, I was checking that out as well. I do read all your comments. And I've come up with 10 combinations that relate to Necrons for 11th edition. Now, little disclaimer, I'm pretty sure that all of these 10 combos are okay, but of course we don't know how many points or detachment points each detachment is going to cost for 11th edition. We don't have that information yet, but you can kind of take a rough guess of how many points they're going to cost. We know the new ones are 1 point each. But I just wanted to put that disclaimer out in case some of these die off. If say for example the Cursed Legion is actually 3 detachment points, then 1 or 2 of these combinations isn't going to work. So I thought I'd just share that with you before we get onto this. And a few of these actually do relate to something else, which is the core rules. Literally a few days after our faction focus was released, they released the full core rules for 11th edition. And there are a few changes in those core rules. So I thought I'd throw 1 or 2 of those into this video as well, because they are going to change a few things. But I've come up with 10 combinations for Necrons in 11th edition using the new stuff. So let's get into it. Let's start with the first one, which is the Phaeron's Armoury and the Obeisance Phalanx. Now the Phaeron's Armoury of course is the big new Titanic detachment, and the Obeisance Phalanx is of course the Triarch detachment with Lich Guard and nobles. Now what you're going to be doing in this detachment, you're going to be grabbing yourself a Necron's Monolith, and you're going to be grabbing yourself the Silent King. Why, you may ask? Well, let's go through this step by step. In this detachment, the Phaeron's Armoury Titanic flying models are going to have a +6 inches to their movement. So those monoliths are now going to be moving 14 inches. You then got your Silent King, and one of his triacle abilities, which is Relentless March, the aura, for all friendlies within 6 inches that are not monster, they get a +2 to their movement characteristics of the models in that unit. So now your monolith isn't moving 14 inches anymore, it's moving 16 inches because of the Silent King buffing the monolith within 6 inches. Now it doesn't stop there, because the Obeisance Phalanx has more to that. Obviously you could just put the Silent King in the Phaeron's Armoury, but why bring the Obeisance Phalanx? Well, there's a few things here. First, you've got the standard detachment rule, worthy foes. The Silent King is going to get a +1 to wound. Cool. That doesn't relate to the monolith, but what does relate to the monolith within this detachment is the Nano Assembly Protocol stratagem, which is a -1 to damage for vehicles. That's going to work with the Silent King, but it's also going to work with the Necron's Monolith as well, which is going to actually be quite effective because cover has changed in this edition. It's not going to affect the save anymore, it's going to affect the ballistic skill. So therefore, having a -1 to damage is probably going to be quite useful coming from the Obeisance Phalanx to go on to your Necron's Monolith with a 2+ armor save. So in total, the Monolith's getting 16 inches due to the King. Optionally, you can take the rerolls to the hits and wounds of a 1, rerolling those ones, instead of the added movement, and also the -1 to the damage stratagem from the Phalanx as well. I think that's a decent little combination. I'm going to definitely be using that detachment the most. I think that's probably my favourite detachment out of those 3 so far. I think there's a lot of power in it that a lot of people are missing. The next one, this one is just relating to the Hand of the Dynasty, and it's not so much a combination, but it's something I've noticed that we're going to be taking advantage of, which is the detachment rule, which is hypermotility protocols. Immortals, warriors gaining assault, and they can also advance an action. What this does is it lets us play MSU, minimum size units. So Immortals in 5s, for example. You don't need characters, you don't need enhancements, you keep the unit cost as cheap as you possibly can. Every single 5 in a unit now being able to advance and still do an action is going to be very key, especially if you're playing missions such as priority assets, which relates quite heavily to doing actions. If your Necron Immortals are advancing and still doing an action at a really cheap cost, that's going to be great. I mean, of course, the damage output isn't going to be as good, but if your primary dictates, doing actions over killing, that's where the points are, and points win your games. But yeah, priority asset missions, reconnaissance missions, disruption missions, they're going to be much easier to achieve if you've got those Immortals in cheap units in this detachment. Now, sticking with this detachment, but I'm going to add something else here. I'm going to add the Canoptek Court to the hand of the Dynasty, because of course the Canoptek Court has the power matrix, and that power matrix gives you rerolls to hits for your Canoptek and Cryptek units, depending on where you've unlocked your power matrix. It's going to be 1s as standard, but obviously within your power matrix you're rerolling all the hit rolls, which is going to be really good for certain combinations. In this combination, I've pulled out a Plasmancer, because you're going to need a Cryptek, and I'm going to be pulling out 10 Necron Immortals. In this example, I've gone with the Tesla Carbines. Now, with the hand of the Dynasty detachment, you've got a unit enhancement, which is Tools of the Dominion, which they showed in the faction focus, which gives Immortals Rapid Fire 1. So if they're going to be within half range, they're going to be getting an extra shot. And why I've chosen the Tesla option here is because Tesla has Assault, so you can still advance and fire. So you're going to get even closer with that extra bit of movement from the advance roll to be able to get into rapid fire range. Now, why I've chosen a Plasmancer in this synergy is the Harbinger of Destruction ability gives you 5+ critical hit rolls. So of course, if you've got full rerolls, if you're completely within your power matrix with your unit, even a 3+, you can just fish for 5+ rolls. You've got a lot of dice there. You can just fish for 5s, because each one of those is going to be a sustained hit. And even if you roll a 3 again, it's still a normal hit. It's not a sustained hit, but it's still a normal hit. So you may as well re-roll it, because you've only got 1/3 of a chance of actually missing, 1/3 of a chance of actually getting a sustained hit, but 2/3 are still going to be a hit, because obviously 3, 4s, 5s, and 6s are still hits. So you may as well fish with the re-rolls from the power matrix, going for those 5+ rolls. Now, if you want to add some more to this synergy, you can take some Canoptek Tomb Crawlers. They've got the Weapon Sentinels ability, which ignores modifiers within 12 inches. Hopefully you'll be within 12, but you're trying to get your rapid fire off, but ignoring cover, ignoring the ballistic skill problems that cover now brings, and any negative modifiers that potentially could happen. These guys just ignore it within 12, which is going to be quite useful with the way cover now works in 11th edition. The third combination I've got for you is within the Awakened Dynasty. This one isn't a combo as such in terms of new detachments, but it's something that we've learned from the core rules. So of course you've got Command Protocols, which is our detachment rule within this detachment, a +1 to hit if the unit is being led by a character. So you get, for example, 20 Necron Warriors and an Overlord carrying the Resurrection Orb. Now, in 10th edition, if you lost all of your warriors, they can no longer come back, because they're kind of classed as a separate unit to the Overlord, even though they've been attached together. They were separate units, separate entities, they just walked alongside each other. In 11th edition, that's no longer the case. They are all one unit now. So therefore, you can pop that Resurrection Orb with your Overlord and bring back the bodyguard part of the unit, even though all the warriors were dead. 11th edition has changed like that, and that's going to be very powerful for Necrons in general. So you're going to be healing a unit D6 wounds with that Resurrection Orb. But let's take, for example, let's push this even further. This is a bit crazy now. If you lost your Necron Warriors and you lost your Overlord. Now, you could still bring stuff back here. I know it sounds crazy, but you've got My Will Be Done, first of all. Reduce the cost of a stratagem by 1. So you've got a free use of a stratagem effectively as long as it's 1 CP. In that detachment, you've got the Protocol of Eternal Revenant, which is being able to revive an infantry character, bringing them back to half wounds. And if I remember correctly, they've got 6 wounds, these Overlords, so that will bring them back to 3 wounds remaining, using that stratagem for free, by the way, because of My Will Be Done. Now, once he's back, at the end of the phase, you can pop that Resurrection Orb, because you're one unit, so you're going to be healing D6 wounds. Let's say, for example, you roll a 5 on the D6 with your Resurrection Orb. 3 of those wounds are going to return to the Overlord because he's already got some wounds missing, And then you're going to be bringing 2 warriors back as well, which I think is mad. And that could be the enemy fight phase, end of the enemy fight phase. Your turn is just around the corner, your command phase is just about to happen. And guess what happens in the Necron command phase? Reanimation protocols. So we're going to be bringing back even more guys, D3, re-rollable because they're warriors, don't forget. If you've got some allies nearby, maybe you've got a Ghost Ark, maybe you've got a Canoptek Reanimator, you can be pumping up those reanimation rolls even more. Maybe in fact you've got a Tachyon Command Barge as well, which has its own resurrection orb that can be used later in the game. So that is a major change from 10th edition because A, you couldn't bring back the bodyguards, B, you definitely couldn't bring back the bodyguards if the infantry guy even died, but now you can literally do all those things, which I think is kind of cool. Definitely worth a mention in this combinations video. The next one is from the Skyshroud Spearhead, and I'm going to combine this with the Cursed Legion. Now, we did do the disclaimer at the start of the video. We're assuming here Cursed Legion is no more than 2 points. If it's 3 points, this is not doable, but just wanted to make that clear. I'm assuming it's 2 points. So in this Skyshroud Spearhead, I know it all relates to Tomb Blades, but it also relates to mounted units that they showed. They showed this in the snippet itself, the enhancement and the stratagem. We're going to grab Locust Destroyers. There's rumours that they're going to be going into Legends. I hope not, because I've just brought 18 not that long ago. They've got the ability Hardwired for Destruction. So you're re-rolling hit rolls. There's certain perimeters in order to do that. The closest enemy unit and on objectives and so on, bloody blah. But they've got the Hardwired for Destruction ability. We're also going to be grabbing a Locust Lord, because of course the Destroyer Cult gives you a 5+ critical hit rolls for the unit, which is very good when you've got lethal hits already with those Gorse Cannons. Now in the Skyshroud Spearhead detachment, the new one, they've got a Deepening Madness unit enhancement, and I make that very clear, unit enhancement, which gives mounted units the ability of Assault. So they can advance up to D6, and they can still fire as normal, which I think is very good, because the range of those weapons is only actually 24. It's not that long, they're kind of mid-range weapons. Now there's also a stratagem in that new detachment, which is Evasive Protocols, a -1 to wound the unit if the strength is greater than our toughness. Very useful. So far so good, right? Now in the Cursed Legion detachment, which we're comboing here, you've got the +2 to the strength of Destroyer Cult units. So that takes the strength 5 cannons to strength 7. So we're starting to build this unit up quite a lot here. There's also an enhancement, which is not a unit enhancement, it's a leader enhancement. There are 2 separate things. You can take both a unit enhancement as well as a leader enhancement. You've got Mark of the Necrosaur, which is a +1 to the hit roll. And of course you're going to put that on the Locust Lord to give the unit +1 to hit. So now they're hitting on 2s. If you want to get really saucy with this, you then go bringing Necrosauramentor with the Infectious Murder Madness ability for destroy units within 6, gaining Sustain Hits 1. So now all of a sudden you have got Advance and Shoot from the enhancement, you've got Sustain Hits 1 from Necrosauramentor, you've got Lethal Hits from the Locust Destroyers standard weapons with the Gorse Cannons, 5+ critical hits, which is going to relate to the Sustain Hits as well as the Lethal Hits on 5s, very nice. You're going to be hitting on 2s anyway because of the +1 to hit enhancement from the Lord. You're going to be having strength 7, not strength 5. You're going to be potentially re-rolling hit rolls with the Locust Destroyer's ability, which you're definitely going to be fishing for those 5+, so re-roll it, even if it's a 3, even if it's a 4, just roll it again. You're hitting on 2s anyway, you're not going to miss that many, but you're more likely to be getting sustain hits and lethal hits from that pool, so you may as well re-roll it. And yeah, extra 2 strength, we already set that to strength 7. So a nice massive combination for your Destroyers in the Skyshroud Spearhead and the Cursed Legion as a combination. Moving on, I'm going to go into the Phaeron's Armoury and the Obeisance Phalanx. We have already touched upon this, but this is like a different method, a different combination with the Phaeron's Armoury and the Obeisance Phalanx. So you're going to be bringing that Monolith back. I think the Monolith is key for that detachment. I'm going to be playing my Monolith a lot more, by the way. You're getting the extra 6 inches of movement, as we know. This time, instead of the Silent King, I'm going to be getting a unit with an Overlord leading the unit. I'm going to be getting a Chronomancer also leading the unit as a support character, and 10 Necron Immortals with the Tesla Carbines. They're going to gain the Worthy Foes detachment rule because there is a Noble in the unit, the Overlord, so they're going to have a +1 to wound against a selected target that battle round. And don't forget, Immortals get to re-roll wound rolls over 1, and if they're firing against enemies on objectives, they get to reroll all the win rolls. So remember that combo, remember that part. We're going to be adding a unit enhancement and using the Monolith. This is coming from the Phaeron's Armoury side now. So you've got the Pro-Locational Optimizer. So when you're popping out of the Eternity Gate with your unit, your infantry unit, you're going to be gaining lethal hits or sustained hits 1. Now we've already got sustained hits 2 with Tesla Carbine, so we'll be selecting lethal hits here, of course. Now I want to take this further. I'm going to add an enhancement on the Overlord. You have to do it on the Overlord, I believe, in the Obeisance Phalanx. Eternal Conqueror, which is allowing us to reroll all our hit rolls against enemy units on objectives. So far we're rerolling all hit rolls on objectives, we're rerolling all wound rolls on objectives. We're getting a +1 to the wound roll on objectives, and we've gained lethal hits by popping out of the Eternity Gate, and we've already got sustained hits 2 with the Tesla Carbines. Now you're going to pop the stratagem. You're going to pop a stratagem here for free because of My Will Be Done. The Overlord has My Will Be Done to reduce the CP cost by 1 in that detachment called Enslaved Artifice, which gives you 5+ critical hit rolls, basically like a Plasmancer, but we haven't got a Plasmancer, so it costs us a CP, although it doesn't because of the Overlord. That's why I've gone with the Chronomancer in this situation. We don't need a Plasmancer because the Overlord has it for free. So 5+ critical hit rolls and re-rolling. Again, you may as well fish. If you roll a 3, just roll it again, because if you get a 5 or a 6, it's going to be a lethal hit and a sustained hits 2 anyway. Now the Chronomancer, I think, is useful. You don't necessarily need the Chronomancer here, but I like to have the Chronomancer. I think the Chronomancer is going to be probably the best Cryptek for 11th edition for Necrons. For both of the abilities, the -1 to be hit, I think is very good, because this is going to stack with cover. Because of the way it's written, cover, it reduces the ballistic skill, which is a characteristic, whereas a -1 to hit is a modifier. So they're two different things. So it's basically like a -2, but I don't want to say -2 because it kind of confuses beginners. But you're going to have a -1 to hit, and your ballistic skill is going to be reduced by 1 as well, if you're in cover, of course. And then the Chronometron ability to be able to move after shooting. We're going to be popping out of that Eternity Gate, doing all our shooting shenanigans, and then stepping off 5 inches as well. Brilliant combination. And yeah, definitely one I'll be using. Okay, going back into the Hand of the Dynasty. This one's just a cool, funky one. I saw this in one of the comments in the previous video, and I thought, you know what, this definitely deserves a place in this combination video. We're going to go Hand of the Dynasty. And you know what, you can, no you can't. I would like to combine this with the Awakened Dynasty, but I believe the Awakened Dynasty is going to be 3 detachment points, so it can't combo if it is 3. So that's why I've left it off. But if it is only 2, put it in here, because you'll get a +1 to hit with the command protocols. But for now, just stick to Hand of the Dynasty. You're going to be getting an Overlord, not with a Resurrection Orb. Even though the Resurrection Orb has a lot of value in 11th edition, go with the Tachyon Arrow just for this fun combination. It's that one-shot weapon at 72-inch range with strength 16, -5 AP, D6 +2 damage. Really cool. If you have that Overlord leading Immortals, you can take the unit enhancement Tools of the Dominion, which gives the Immortal units Rapid Fire 1. It's not just the Immortals, it's the Immortal unit. So therefore that Tachyon Arrow is going to very likely get the Rapid Fire 1, so 2 shots basically. Now there are ways to actually get more shots here, which is kind of funny. If you were to progress this even further, let's say you went with the Phaeron's Armoury and you popped out of that Monolith that we just spoke about a minute ago, you're going to be gaining lethal hits or sustained hits 1. Let's say you went with sustained hits 1 and your Tachyon Arrow now has sustained hits 1. Maybe there's a Plasmancer in the unit as well. Critical hits on a 5+. Do you see where I'm going with this? 2 shots because of rapid fire. Maybe both of your shots are 5s, which now gives you 4 hits because of sustained hits 1 and the Plasmancer. So you could potentially have 4 hits with a Tachyon Arrow if you pop out of a Monolith with a Plasmancer involved. Of course, that's a lot of fun. I don't know how competitive that is. It's quite a lot of points. Resurrection Orb is obviously a lot more valuable in 11th, but I think that's just really fun and really cool to do. So yeah, you got to try that one out at some point. Okay, on to the next one, Skyshroud Spearhead, and I'm going to combine this with the Cryptek Conclave. So what you're going to be doing, you're going to be grabbing your Tomb Blades and you're going to be grabbing your Particle Beamers with your Tomb Blades. All 6 Tomb Blades, by the way, because they've got Blast and Devastating Wounds and all that jazz. Now, the Detachment rule, of course, gives you Deep Strike and a +1 to hit if you made an Ingress move, so a Deep Strike counts as an Ingress move. So you're popping in from Deep Strike and bam, you're hitting on 2s all of a sudden, with Blast and all that stuff. Now the Cryptek Conclave part of this combination is trying to have a Cryptek within 12 inches of the Tomb Blades that have Deep Strike. You can also use your speed, I guess, with the Tomb Blades being quite rapid. But you get within 12 inches of, say, Illumina's Ares, as an example. And of course, within this detachment, you have got a stratagem called Synergistic Empowerment, which gives basically the Cryptek picks a unit within 12 and says, aha, you've also got the Cryptek keyword now as a stratagem. So the Tomb Blades now have the Cryptek keyword. You then go into the detachment rule, which is the Technosaurus. I always call it Technosaurus, it's not Jurassic Park. Technosorcerus augmentations. In there you get to select one of those options. If you're firing at infantry, which you should be, you select anti-infantry 3+. Now why do you select anti-infantry 3+? Well, it's because they've got dev wounds. So any 3+ against infantry basically becomes a critical wound roll, so it effectively becomes 6, if you want to look at it that way, on a more basic level, but it becomes a critical wound roll, and critical wound rolls cause devastating wounds. Devastating wounds turn into mortal wounds, so there's no armor save, there's no invulnerable save. So when you've got D6 shots per Tomb Blade, and you've got 6 Tomb Blades, and you've got Blast and anti-infantry 3+, with devastating wounds, which become mortal wounds, you can see how this kind of layers and layers into a lot of damage on those infantry units. Okay, what's next? We've got the Phaeron's Armoury and the Cursed Legion as a combination. I was to and fro whether this should be Cursed Legion or Cryptek Conclave. You can take the Cryptek Conclave and kind of do the same thing we just did with the Tomb Blades with the devastating wounds. I think the Cursed Legion has more value. So let me get into this. So the Phaeron's Armoury, again, the cornerstone, Monolith, super fast, 6 inches of movement. We know that part. The Cursed Legion side of it, you get 6 Canoptek Wraiths and a Technomancer, and you add the Murder Mind enhancement to the Technomancer to give him the Destroy Cult keyword and 3 inches of movement. Now I'm not again going to go into why you can do this, because I'm going to get a comment somewhere saying you can't do this because of Wraiths are not Destroy Cult. But yeah, look at the previous videos, find 10th edition stuff, you literally can do this. So, Particle Casters are the selection you're going to be doing with the weapons for Wraiths. That's the standard loadout anyway. No one's really going with the transdimensional beamers. I don't think they're that good. These casters, these pistols, have devastating wounds, which is good. So you're going to be using the Eternity Gate from the Monolith, pop in. Maybe you're in an engagement that you didn't really want to be in with the Wraiths and they're kind of stuck. So you can kind of drag them out, use the Eternity Gate, and then all of a sudden with the Pro Locational Optimizer from the Phaeron's Armoury, you're going to be gaining either lethal or sustained. In this case, you want sustained. You don't want to pick lethal because any 6s to hit ignore the wound roll, and you want to be rolling the wound roll because of the devastating wounds. So you're picking sustained hits to be getting more in the hit pool to be rolling to wound for devastating wounds. Then you're going to be selecting a stratagem from the Cursed Legion, which is Image of Death, -1 to hit. Now this isn't a modifier to the characteristic, it's just a -1 to hit. It's a modifier to the dice roll. So therefore it's going to stack with cover. Very similar to the Chronomancer we mentioned earlier in this video. Cover reduces your ballistic skill, whereas a -1 to hit is a modifier to the dice. So that's going to stack. It's effectively going to be a -2 to hit these Wraiths if they're within cover. Now that's kind of crazy because Wraiths are already extremely resilient. If you've got 6 of these popping out of the Monolith, sustained hits 1 now with your pistols with devastating wounds, -1 to hit, potentially adding cover on top. You've then got the 4+ invulnerable save from the Wraiths, a 5+ feel no pain save from the Technomancer. This part hasn't completely been confirmed, but a few other channels, one being Vanguard Tactics, kind of put a lot of evidence towards how they read it and what it is. Even if your Technomancer was to get precision shot out, sniped out, or epic challenged and killed before the Canoptek Wraiths, because the Canoptek Wraiths and the Technomancer are just one unit now, you can start to resurrect or reanimate, heal the Technomancer back into the unit, providing that none of the Wraiths have lost any wounds. So that's a massive difference, that's a massive advantage for 11th edition for Necrons, because previously once that Technomancer is gone, he's kind of gone. But being able to bring him back, being able to bring back the 5+ Fear No Pain save, because that was the Achilles heel of the Canoptek Wraiths in 10th edition. Your opponent knew, just take the Technomancer out and the Canoptek Wraiths will fall not long after, because they've lost the Fear No Pain save. So all that, alongside the fact that it's a -1 to hit the unit and then cover's different now, they're going to be very tough and very resilient in 11th edition. Okay, where are we? Hand of the Dynasty and the Cryptek Conclave. Grab your Immortals. Tesla Carbines is what I've gone for. And of course, in the new snippets we got from the Warhammer community page, you're going to go with that Units Enhancement, Tools of the Dominion for the Rapid Fire 1 with your Tesla Carbines. You then grab your Chronomancer, and using the Cryptek Conclave ability or detachment rule, your Cryptek's going to select one of those options. In this case, you don't need Anti-Infantry 3+, because you've not got Devastating Wounds. You don't need Anti-Mounted 4+, you've not got Devastating Wounds. You don't need Assault, because you've already got Assault with the Tesla Carbines, and you probably don't need Heavy because you're going to be advancing. So therefore, the last option, Ignores Cover, is actually quite a good one, and we've already mentioned a few times in this video how important cover is going to be in 11th edition. You then grab a Leader Enhancement, so not a Unit Enhancement, a Leader Enhancement, Gauntlet of Compression within that detachment, which gives extra 6 inches to range attacks for the unit. Bearing in mind that we want to get within rapid fire range. So previously, if it was a 24-inch range, you needed to get within 12 inches for rapid fire. If you're going to add another 6 inches, those Tesla Carbines are going to 30-inch range, which means rapid fire isn't 12 anymore, it's 15 inches. Because half of 30 is 15. So you're gaining extra range for your rapid fire. And of course, Immortals do what they do. They reroll 1 star wound or reroll all wound rolls on objectives. And the Chronomancer does what he does, -1 to be hit. Again, stacking with cover. And you're going to move after shooting, which is going to be great when you've already advanced. One last piece of synergy within that detachment, which is the Micro Scarab Swarm Stratagem. I think this is like a bit of a forgotten stratagem, but you can basically give an invulnerable save to your Immortals for a 4+. If you use it with Warriors, it gives them a 5+, but in this case we're using it with Immortals. So giving them a -1 to be hit and stacking that with cover, reducing the ballistic skill of enemy units, and then giving these guys a 4+ invulnerable save. I didn't think the 4+ invulnerable save was that key in 10th edition, because it took quite a lot of AP just to get it to that. It was -2 AP, -3 in cover in 10th edition. But now cover's completely different, it now affects the ballistic skill. So therefore this invulnerable save is going to be more valuable to Immortals. And don't forget the Hand of the Dynasty, you can be doing an advanced move and doing an action, so that's also part of the combination if you wanted to do that as well. So guys, that is 10 combinations that relates to the new detachments and the core rules. If you've got any to add, put them down in the comments down below so we can all read them and get better for Necrons in 11th edition. Guys, if you want more Necron content, make sure you're subscribed, and I'll see you guys in the next one.